Welcome to another episode of Pacific Matters. My name is Thomas Manglona, reporting on Saipan outside of the CNMI Governor's office. This time we have our interview and Decision 2022 headlines from the NMI with the Democratic team, Representative Tina Sablan and Representative Leila Staffler. Representative Sablan and Representative Staffler, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We've asked you this before, but we're asking all of the candidates just to introduce yourself to the people, the voters, and tell us why you're running this year.
Thank you, Tomas. So I guess I'll get started. So my name is Christina Sablan. I am the Democratic candidate for governor of the Commonwealth. I am currently a representative in the 22nd House of Representatives. I chair the Health and Welfare Committee, and I am running for governor. To state it most simply, because I love our islands. I believe in the potential of our people and our Commonwealth to be one of the best places in the world to live and work and visit. And Leila and I have a vision and a plan for a Commonwealth and a future that we can all be proud of, and a plan for how we get there.
And Representative Staffler, do you remember the moment when Representative Sablan asked you to be her running mate, and why you decided to ultimately accept the challenge?
Yes, I definitely do. It felt like a proposal.
Kind of was.
Yeah, it was really honor. I felt such an honor to be asked by Rep Sablan, because I've worked with her in so many different community action projects over the years, and I knew that we would work well together. We have the same values and same visions of how this Marianas can be a beautiful, amazing place for our people to live and thrive.
And can you tell us a little bit about your political and life experience that you're bringing to the table? Representative Staffler, everyone knows you as a longtime educator, and Representative Sablan, your experience as a journalist and working in government as well in different capacities. So what experience are you bringing to the table?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
All right. Well, I have been in the House for the last year and a half, and I was an educator, and I still consider myself an educator, a lifelong learner, as they call it. But I would say that I bring experience of connecting people and realigning systems so that they can work more efficiently and effectively for the people that they're aimed to serve. And that's the kind of experience that I bring. When you look at the definition just of politics in very general sense, it is making a simple set of activities associated with getting groups to make decisions. And I feel like as an educator, it doesn't matter, if it's in a classroom or with a group of teachers. It is a way to help people come to a decision where everybody has, put their input in. And I feel like that's the kind of skill set that I can definitely bring to the table with Rep Sablan.
Yeah, so I think between the two of us, Leila and I bring a pretty wide range of experience and public service backgrounds and leadership to the table, and we would bring that to the office of the governor and the lieutenant governor. So I'm serving now in my third term in the legislature. As I said earlier, I chair the Health and Welfare Committee. I have led and participated in legislative investigations. I've helped pass budgets. I've worked on a wide variety of bills and policies in that capacity. And then before that, I have a number of years of experience in working in our congressional office, working with disaster survivors and veterans, doing immigration casework in particular, and also working with federal agencies. I was also a journalist, did that for a number of years during a very tumultuous and very interesting time in our Commonwealth's history. I also have a background in planning, urban and regional planning, and in conservation science. And prior to all of that, to getting into politics and working for the congressional office and being a journalist, I also worked for the Division of Environmental Quality, where I did everything. The environment has always been important to me, and so I had some experience working as both a litter control officer and doing enforcement, especially in solid waste enforcement, but also doing a lot of environmental education and outreach, for everything from watershed fairs and environmental expos to planting trees and promoting recycling. So, I bring that experience as well. And it was really in those early years, that was my first job after college, coming home, and it was those years as a rank and file government employee that I became aware of how much the work of public servants is impacted by politics and by governance, and that was when I became more interested in like the broader questions of governance in the Commonwealth, and how we can move our community forward to bring about a government that is more fair and more honest and more transparent.
And that is a huge part of your platform. It's plastered all across the billboards: good governance, transparency, honesty, things of that nature. We can't ignore the historic nature of this campaign. Representative Staffler, at a recent event for the Soroptimist International, you were talking about how when we have more females in office, the risks that politicians take are more positive outcomes, and as opposed to what you contextualized as negative risks that previous politicians have taken. So this historic ticket, how do you think that impacts the type of administration and the type of government you will run?
It sometimes feels like we need to refocus and look at the bigger picture, because in service, making sure that we can align the systems really will help people have better outcomes. And when we look at women in leadership, sometimes we see things a little bit differently. We are more open to hearing different sides, and it's definitely making sure that our stakeholders are involved. Not to say that male leaders are not like that as well, but when you look at the research, you can see that more women leaders are more apt to that kind of decision-making behavior versus male leaders.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that the research also shows that representation is so important, just generally in government, and it's important to have a government that reflects the diversity of the community. And women make up just over half of the population. We should have more women in leadership positions. And in terms of the style of leadership, I think that both Leila and I, and the women that we work with, bring a collaborative approach to decision making. I think we're pretty good at being facilitators and listening and taking that bigger picture view of the issues that are being debated in the legislature, or that will be discussed and decided upon in the governor's office. And it is a different style, and I think having a diversity of perspectives in government is always good. And Leila and I, we have just different experiences, different lived experiences that we would bring to the table, and I think that offers a lot of value to the people that we hope to serve.
And while we're on this subject, before shifting to your platform, I wanted to ask you, I don't know if it's a difficult question, but do you think that, have you experienced negative reaction to your campaign, or received any negative backlash or any of that sort, or criticism that you think is maybe motivated by stereotypes or, just going to say misogyny in the community? I just wanted to get your perspective on that, if you're comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, I think that has definitely been part of this experience of running as the first all-female gubernatorial ticket in the Commonwealth's history. It's a first time for the Commonwealth, and it's change that maybe not everybody is ready for, but I think for the most part, overwhelmingly, I would say people have been very welcoming of the changes that we stand for and the good governance that we are committed to delivering. They are excited about the prospect of making history in this way, of having the first two female governor and lieutenant governor candidates in the office of the governor, and And I think there's a lot more of a positive reception than negative, but I will also say that the kinds of questions that we're sometimes asked, the kind of scrutiny that we get is maybe it falls a lot more heavily on us because we are women, and I'd be very surprised if any of our male counterparts would be the recipients of the same types of questions.
What kind of questions?
Well, I mean, like, who's going to be the first gentleman? Like questions like that, right? Or like, what makes you cry? I think is another one that we've gotten. The calls for a spouses debate, like that's there's definitely an underlying sexism. That's very clear, and I think that should be called out. But it doesn't hinder us. It doesn't deter us. We continue to move forward in the campaign, and again, as I said, like those, for the most part, I think people have been very, very welcoming and very embracing of our candidacies.
I felt like it was more in the very beginning as far as the reception that we would get in the community, like, oh, I don't know if we're ready for two women. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel that now, and when I go in the community, I don't hear that. I hear more of, oh, we're going to give the girls a chance. Yeah. We want to see what women can do. We want to let women have an opportunity to show what they can do and lead. And so I feel like although that might have been a first impression or a response from some people, it's not the overlying theme throughout this entire campaign. I think especially when you look at other countries where we have very successful and good examples of women in leadership, like in New Zealand or in Australia, New Zealand and Scandinavia, Germany, for example. I mean,
US.
Yeah, even in the US, there are lots of examples of where women are at the top seats making great decisions for their communities and countries, and there's no reason why we couldn't do the same.
And we have plenty of examples here too.
Yeah.
I mean, women leading the judiciary, women leading government departments and agencies here, women leading in business. So it's really not that much of a stretch to imagine two women in the governor and lieutenant governor's offices.
All right, I wanted to shift to your platform. Voters are watching this wondering what you're going to get done. Big picture, what is the most important thing for the Sablan and Staffler administration?
The big picture is, so this culture of good governance that we talk about, what that actually looks like in terms of implementation, right? We talk about fairness in government. For us, that means, for example, no more of these sweetheart deals, questionable sole source contracts. We want fairness in government hiring and government contracting. We want to end this culture of political intimidation. That's what fairness looks like for us. We want honesty and fiscal responsibility, and for us that means more transparency in the way public funds are being spent. We are committed to publishing a report of the fiscal condition of the government and keeping people apprised of how our funds are being allocated, especially all the federal funds. Over $2 billion that, thanks to Congressman Keeley, thanks to the Democrats in Congress and President Biden, we are seeing a windfall, this unprecedented, once-in-a-generation opportunity to really transform the Commonwealth in terms of infrastructure, in terms of education and healthcare, and things that would have lasting value for our people. And we are committed to investing those resources, spending them wisely, and really building for a future. Right? And what's important, all of that is important. And for the next 4 years, Leila and I will be laying the foundation, planting the seeds for a long-term future that is built upon the education, the health and the well-being and the infrastructure of our Commonwealth, and really creating the kind of future that we can all be proud of. But it really starts now. It starts with this election. And our message to people is that change really is possible. Good governance is possible. And they will see that when they vote for it.
I wanted to talk about the elephant, or perhaps the donkey in the room, when it comes to the economy. Tourism is the only market. I guess, would you agree with that? Everyone talks about diversifying the economy, but it's kind of hard to get to a place where we can bat up against something like the international tourism market. So what's your vision there with the economy in general, and also your plans for tourism? We've seen Governor Torres in the past decade push for more airlines. He's invested ARPA funds into the MBA. I'm sure you might have thoughts on that as well. But what's your plan to address the economy and ultimately our bread and butter tourism?
Right. So, in our view and in our plan, tourism will remain the mainstay, the number one industry in our economy. But I think what has been lacking and what we want to build upon is more diversification of the tourism industry and more local participation in that industry. So, for example, more local tour guides. We want to clean up our islands and repair our tourist sites. There's so much work that should have been done in these last couple of years in the pandemic to improve and beautify and enhance our tourism sites, and as well as our residential areas, our villages. We want the islands to be pleasant and attractive and livable and beautiful for everybody who lives here and everybody who visits, and so that our visitors can come back again and again. We want to see more enhancement of our cultural and historic sites. There's so much that the Marianas has to offer, so much that we can do to make this place the kind of place that tourists want to come back to again and again. And we'd like to invest more in that. We also think that small businesses should be the heart of this economy and building up our local workforce. And Leila, that's Leila's, very near and dear to Leila's heart, is investing in our educational and training institutions to build up a local workforce and provide opportunities for small businesses and entrepreneurs to get started and to succeed and thrive in this community. So that is the type of economy that we envision is one that lifts everybody up, brings people out of poverty, helps small businesses, and really builds upon the middle class, and gives working families the boost that they need.
And Representative Staffler, I'm sure as an educator, this might be one of the main issues you tackle. So what's your comment on the economy and tourism in general?
Well, I really truly believe that our economy is based on the success of our small businesses. And for our small businesses to thrive, they need to have the workforces that they need, and they need to have the systems that the government is supposed to provide in the service, as far as getting your documentation, all your paperwork. That shouldn't be as hard as it is currently. Because that's one of the barriers that a lot of small businesses tell us about. And if a small business has a hard time even just starting, then that's not going to contribute to our economy in any way. And so making sure that the systems that are aligned for those types of things are actually aligned in a way that is beneficial for the businesses that are seeking it. And in doing so, we might be able to expand more business opportunities that would maybe bring in other industries. People talk about agriculture, people talk about even service industries, us being so close to Asia. We've heard about these types of things before, but I've not seen some of the actions that could be taken, and I feel like that's an area that we could explore more, definitely. But a lot of those places will not come to a place like this unless there are more fairness, unless the systems are aligned and that there's fairness in the applications of those systems, because businesses don't want to invest in a place that they don't feel like is going to have a fair shake, and that's one of the things that's really important to the Sablan and Staffler administration, would be to make sure that all people will have equity and access, and making sure that we actually provide service that we intend.
I wanted to now talk about ARPA and kind of shift the conversation towards also some public criticism and challenges that your campaign might be going through. And you're both legislators right now. You're mulling over the budget. There's a risk of a partial government shutdown. What would you do with what's left of ARPA, or how would you have done it differently? What would a Sablan Staffler administration done with what many are describing as this war chest of once in a lifetime,
Right.
nearly $500 million?
Right. And how much is left, I think, is the $500 million question, right? I mean, I think the first thing that we would have done differently and that we will do going forward is to provide more transparency in how much remains of the American Rescue Plan monies that were directed to the Commonwealth, and not just ARPA. There are other federal funding sources that are also significant windfalls for the CNMI if we just spend those funds right and properly. So one is transparency, and then two is to really re-examine how those funds are being allocated. Like what are the priorities? It's really unclear. I think that maybe the biggest mistake of this administration, one of them anyway, with respect to ARPA money, is that they seem to be of the mindset that only one person should be the decision maker for how $500 million should be spent, and that's just
it goes
so
against all leadership principles.
Irresponsible, and it does, and it's not very conducive to community buy-in. And when there's no transparency, there's also no trust, and people want to know. I think I certainly would like to see that these funds are being spent in ways that would have some kind of sustainable and lasting impact, right?
And so with that said, I just wanted to couple it with the budget question. Do you believe the government is top heavy? I'm sure you're aware of Governor Torres's criticism that slashing full-time positions, even if perhaps they're not filled yet, is a major concern of his. Would you say that the government is top heavy in that regard, and how would that change under your administration?
When we moved to eliminate the unfilled vacancies that were in the governor's budget, that was an effort on our part to trim the fat in government, right? These are positions that have been vacant for quite some time, and we had questions about how important and how necessary all of these various positions were. Keep in mind, hundreds of new positions were opened. Many were filled and many were not filled, and we chose to eliminate the ones that were not filled, and preparing for the eventuality of these ARPA funds running out. Right?
I guess what I'm trying to get to is if under a Sablan Staffler administration, will the NMI government continue to be the largest employer in the Marianas?
Well, can I answer that?
Yeah,
I
sure.
guess one of the things that is really important to Tina and I is seeing that people have workforce pathways that actually are, what's the right word? Like pathways that are not temporary. I feel like working in government, unless you are a civil service employee, is not. It's a temporary type of work. There's no real stability unless unless the parties change. I feel like we need to look at how we can get people who want to work into jobs that have but have different ending pathways where they are able to have independence on their own and not have to rely only on government work opportunities.
Well, particularly when
like
the
in the
funding
private
source
sector.
is going to run out,
Mhm.
right? And so I think, I
Linking people.
I hear your question, Tomas, and I don't think that I don't think that would be the right way to approach how we deal with the eventuality of ARPA funding running out. It's not, is the government going to continue to be top heavy? Is it going to continue to be bloated, or whatever people want to call it, right? I think the question is, are we delivering the services that people deserve, that people demand? And if we are not, and I think many would say that we are not, like, what would it take to get to that